Have you ever noticed how silence can sometimes be the loudest sound in the room? Not the comforting silence of solitude, but the heavy silence where your own voice seems to disappear. You speak, yet it feels as though your words dissolve before they reach another's ear. You try again, but what comes back is not your own voice. It is only the echo of someone else's story, someone else's needs, someone else's image bouncing back at you. Carl Jung often spoke of the soul's journey toward wholeness, a process he called individuation. Along that path, many of us find ourselves trapped in what can only be described as an echo chamber of the narcissist. It is a psychic environment where you are no longer recognized as a full self, but only as a reflection, a mirror that amplifies another's desires while silencing your own. In the beginning, it may feel intoxicating. To be mirrored so intensely can feel like homecoming, like at last someone sees you completely. But as time goes on, you realize the reflection is not of you at all. It is of them, their persona, their fragile mask. And your own essence becomes fainter and fainter until you begin to wonder if it exists at all. This journey is not only about relationships with others, it is about the profound inner struggle between the false self and the authentic self, between the voice that demands recognition and the deeper soul that longs to be heard. And so, in this exploration, we will walk through 7 signs that you have outgrown the narcissistic echo chamber. 7 thresholds that mark your passage from silence to sound, from reflection to reality, from fragmentation to wholeness. The first sign begins where the echo itself starts to lose its charm. At the start of the relationship with a narcissistic presence, whether it is a partner, a parent, a friend, or even an institution, the echoes can feel strangely rewarding. Every compliment, every approving glance, every moment of recognition feeds a deep hunger inside. For someone who is empathic, who longs to connect and to be seen, this mirroring can feel like water to a thirsty soul. You lean closer, drinking in the sound of their validation, believing it is love. But over time, something shifts. The echo repeats the same notes again and again, and suddenly it tastes stale. What once felt nourishing begins to feel empty. You notice that no matter how many times they praise you, no matter how many moments they reflect back, your worth, the satisfaction fades almost instantly. It is like eating food that looks beautiful, but leaves you hungrier than before. Jung would call this a signal from the unconscious, a whisper rising up to remind you that external echoes can never replace the authentic voice of the self. The psyche knows when it is being fed illusions, and eventually it rebels. The rebellion might show itself as restlessness. You find yourself bored in conversations that once thrilled you. You sense an irritation you cannot explain. You ask yourself, why does this not feel good anymore? Why do I leave these encounters feeling smaller instead of larger? This is the first sign. The sound no longer satisfies because it was never your sound to begin with. You were listening to a projection, an illusion, a performance designed to keep you engaged. The hollowness you feel is not failure. It is clarity. It is your soul tugging at your sleeve, urging you to turn away from the echo and listen for something deeper. Imagine a singer who has spent years lip-syncing to someone else's track. At first, the crowd's applause is intoxicating. But one night, standing under the hot lights, the singer realizes the microphone is dead. The audience is not hearing them at all, and suddenly the applause feels meaningless. That is the moment the singer decides they would rather risk singing off key with their true voice than continue miming perfection with a borrowed one. So it is with you. When the echoes no longer satisfy, you are standing at the edge of authenticity. The hollowness you feel is the growing space where your real voice is meant to rise. Do not mistake this emptiness for despair. It is actually a doorway. The echo chamber has lost its magic not because you are broken, but because you are ready to grow beyond it. Your unconscious is whispering, you deserve more than repetition. You deserve resonance. You deserve to hear yourself again. And so you begin to notice the difference between a borrowed sound and your own. You notice the subtle discontent that lingers after each exchange. You feel the ache of wanting something more real. This ache is not weakness. It is the seed of transformation. It is the first crack in the wall of mirrors, the first ripple in the still water of the chamber. The narcissistic echo chamber thrives on your hunger for affirmation. But when that hunger starts to shift, when the echo no longer quenches your thirst, the structure begins to collapse. You are no longer the passive listener. You are becoming the seeker of your own truth. This is the beginning of liberation. Not dramatic, not sudden, but subtle, like the fading sweetness of a song that once enchanted you. The music is still playing, but your heart has moved on, and in that quiet movement you step closer to the sound of your own becoming. Every performance eventually reaches its breaking point. No matter how polished, no matter how carefully rehearsed, the mask will tremble. At first, you may not notice. The narcissist's persona is built to dazzle, to overwhelm you with light, so that the shadows remain hidden. They present themselves as the ideal companion, the perfect friend, the flawless guide. Their words are honeyed, their gestures grand. You believe because you want to believe. But then, almost imperceptibly, a crack appears. Perhaps it is a small contradiction. They promise loyalty, but you see them dismiss someone else behind closed doors. They speak of kindness, yet their eyes narrow with contempt when you falter. The mask slips in tiny ways, an impatient sigh, a cold silence, a cruel joke delivered with a smile. And once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. This is the second sign you have outgrown the echo chamber the illusion no longer holds. The light no longer blinds you. You begin to see through the carefully painted persona to the fragile scaffolding beneath. Jung taught that the persona is not inherently evil. It is a mask we all wear to meet the world, a necessary layer between our inner depths and the outer demands of life. But when the mask hardens, when it becomes a prison rather than a tool, it distorts reality. The narcissist clings to their persona with desperate force, terrified that if it slips, the shame of their hidden shadow will be exposed. Your growth begins when you stop colluding with the mask. You notice the mismatch between what they say and what they do. You sense the hollowness behind their grand gestures. You catch glimpses of the wounded child hidden in the dark corners of their psyche. And though part of you aches to heal that hidden self, another part of you whispers, "This is not mine to fix." The moment the mask slips is often accompanied by pain. You may feel betrayed, even humiliated. How could I have believed so deeply in this illusion? How could I have given so much of myself to a facade? But remember, the fact that you now see the cracks is not a failure. It is evidence of your awakening. Your perception is sharpening. Your inner eye is adjusting to the truth. Imagine walking through a theater. For months you have been enchanted by a magnificent play. The actors seem larger than life, the scenery breathtaking, the emotions raw and real. Then one night you happen to glance backstage. You see the wires, the painted cardboard, the actors laughing out of character. The spell is broken. You cannot return to the same level of belief. This is what it feels like when the narcissist's mask begins to slip. The enchantment fades, and in the fading you reclaim your sight. You may try to deny it. You may tell yourself it was only a bad day, only a moment of weakness. You may work harder to restore the glittering illusion, but somewhere deep inside you already know. The mask is not the person. The reflection is not the reality. This knowledge is painful, but it is also liberating. For the first time, you see that the echo chamber is not built of truth, but of projection. It is a hall of mirrors designed to keep you spinning. By noticing the slip, by acknowledging the inconsistency, you place your first crack in that hall. The narcissist may sense your shift. They may grow defensive, more critical, more demanding. They may try to repair the mask with new layers of charm, but you have already seen too much. Once the illusion breaks, no amount of glitter can restore its original shine. Jung wrote that confronting the shadow is one of the most difficult tasks of the psyche. For the narcissist, the slipping mask is a threat of exposure. For you, it is an invitation to step out of the performance and into authenticity. The second sign is not about victory or confrontation. It is simply about sight. You are no longer blind. You see the mask, you see the crack, and most importantly, you see yourself reflected less and less in their eyes. In that moment, you stand at the threshold of freedom. The stage lights dim, the costume falters, and you realize you are not a character in their play. You are the author of your own. There comes a moment, quiet but undeniable, when you realize that your own voice has grown faint. It is not simply that others do not listen. It is that you yourself can no longer hear it clearly. Words form on your lips, but before they reach the air, you question them. Will this upset them? Will this make me appear weak? Will this bring silence or ridicule? And so you hold back, again and again, until the voice you once trusted feels like a stranger. This is the third sign that you have outgrown the narcissistic echo chamber, the growing awareness that your inner voice has been pushed so far to the edges that it barely speaks. In Jung's language, the self is always present, always waiting to be heard. But when we live too long under the dominance of another's projections, the self is muted. It does not vanish, but it retreats, whispering instead of singing. For the empathic soul, this muting often begins with sacrifice. You lower your volume so the other can shine. You soften your truth so their illusion remains intact. You bend yourself into shapes that will not disturb their fragile mask. At first, you call this love. You tell yourself that harmony matters more than honesty, that kindness is silence. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the silence becomes suffocating. You wake one morning and realize you no longer remember what your own laughter sounds like. The distance from your own voice can be terrifying. It feels as if you have lost yourself. But in truth, the very fact that you notice the distance is a sign of awakening. A soul that is fully asleep does not know it is silent. It is only when consciousness begins to stir that the absence of your voice becomes unbearable. You might notice it in small moments. A conversation where you agree without thinking, then feel hollow afterward. A decision where you defer automatically, then later ache with regret. A dream in which you try to shout, but no sound emerges. These are signals from the unconscious urging you to listen for the voice that has been hidden. The tragedy of the echo chamber is that it convinces you your voice is unnecessary. The narcissist thrives on your silence because in that silence they can project endlessly uninterrupted. But the psyche rebels. It aches for expression. It demands a return to authenticity. Imagine walking through a forest where every bird sings but one. That silent bird sits on a branch, feathers ruffled, beak closed. At first you accept it as normal, but the longer you listen, the more you realize something is missing. The forest is incomplete without that single voice. That bird is you. And the silence you carry is not natural. It is a wound. To feel your own voice as distant is painful, but it is also the first step toward reclaiming it. The soul cannot tolerate erasure forever. It will call you back through dreams, through body aches, through sudden bursts of anger or grief. These eruptions are not flaws. They are signals, cracks in the dam, reminders that your voice still lives within you, waiting for release. Jung believed that what we repress does not disappear. It gathers energy. The longer your voice is silenced, the stronger the eruption when it finally returns. This is why the third sign is both fragile and powerful. You feel small, but the very awareness of your smallness is the seed of great strength. You may begin tentatively. A quiet nowhere once you said yes. A small confession of what you actually feel. A journal entry written late at night, unfiltered and raw. Each act is a thread leading you back to yourself. Each word spoken is a bridge from distance to presence. The narcissist may resist. They may mock your attempts, dismiss your truth, remind you how inconvenient your voice is to their performance. But you have already crossed a threshold. The silence no longer feels safe. The echo no longer feels like home, and so you lean closer to the faint sound within, choosing to follow it. even when it trembles. This is the essence of individuation. To leave behind the voices that demand your silence and to return to the voice that is uniquely your own. It may feel distant now, but with each act of courage it grows louder. With each step away from the chamber, you hear it more clearly. The third sign, then, is not despair. It is recognition. It is the moment you place your hand on your chest and whisper, "I am still here. My voice is still mine. My story is not over." For the narcissist, you were never a person in the fullest sense. You were a mirror, a surface polished to reflect their ideal image back to them. At first, this role can feel intoxicating. To be chosen as the one who reflects, the one who completes their performance, feels like significance. You feel needed. You feel indispensable. But over time, something shifts. The mirror begins to crack, not because you want to hurt them, but because authenticity cannot be suppressed forever. Your truth seeps through the reflection like water finding its way through stone. You sigh at the wrong moment. You hesitate instead of applauding. You express a need of your own. And suddenly the perfect reflection fractures. This is the fourth sign you have outgrown the narcissistic echo chamber. The cracks in the mirror reveal not only the fragility of their mask, but also the resilience of your emerging self. The narcissist depends on an unbroken mirror. They must see only their idealized persona shining back at them. When the cracks appear, they feel threatened. They may lash out, accusing you of disloyalty, of weakness, of betrayal. But their reaction is not truly about you. It is about the terror of their own shadow breaking through. Jung taught that projection is the psyche's way of avoiding the shadow. We cast what we cannot accept in ourselves onto another. The narcissist projects their shame, their inadequacy, their self-doubt. And when the mirror cracks, that projection begins to bounce back. They can no longer fully deny what lurks within. For you, the crack is painful, but also liberating. You begin to see that the reflection was never about you. You were never truly seen. You were an instrument in their performance. The emptiness you felt, the confusion, the loneliness even in their presence, suddenly it makes sense. The mirror did not honor your essence. It only demanded your silence. The first crack may feel like catastrophe. You might fear that you have ruined everything, that the bond will shatter completely. But look closer. The crack is not destruction. It is revelation. Through it you glimpse your own face, dim but real, waiting beneath the layers of projection. Imagine holding a mirror that suddenly splinters. The image staring back at you is fragmented, distorted. At first, panic. But then you realize between the shards you can see what lies beyond. For the first time, the mirror does not blind you. It opens a window. So it is with the narcissistic mirror. When it breaks, you begin to see reality. You see their contradictions. You see your own longing. You see the futility of sustaining an illusion that devours you. And once you see, you cannot go back to blindness. The narcissist may redouble their efforts polishing the broken glass, demanding you reflect them perfectly once again. But the spell is broken. The fractures remain. And with each new crack, your own reflection grows stronger. This is the paradox. What feels like loss is actually return. What feels like collapse is actually construction. The crack in the mirror is the first glimpse of your own soul staring back at you. Do not fear the breakage. Mirrors were never meant to contain your entire being. They were meant to remind you of your form, not define your essence. When the mirror shatters, you are no longer imprisoned by reflection. You are free to look within. This fourth sign is not about anger or revenge. It is about clarity. The clarity that comes when illusion can no longer be sustained. The clarity that whispers, "I am more than a reflection. I am more than a surface for another's gaze. I am a self with depth, with boundaries, with a voice that deserves to be heard." The cracks in the mirror mark the beginning of your emancipation. The chamber loses its hold. The echo loses its charm. And you, for the first time, see yourself not as a projection, not as a reflection, but as the one who has been there all along, waiting to step out of the glass and into the world. There comes a day when the silence becomes too heavy, the cracks too deep, and the weight of the illusion too costly. In that moment, something new begins to stir within you. It is small at first, fragile, almost imperceptible. But it is there. It is the quiet insistence of your own self demanding space. It is the beginning of boundaries. For so long, your life inside the narcissistic echo chamber has been defined by permeability. Their moods became your moods. Their hunger became your task. Their story became your identity. To love meant to dissolve. To care meant to vanish. But now you begin to sense that love without self is not love at all. It is erasure. And so against the pull of old patterns, you begin to draw a line. At first, it may be nothing more than a whisper of refusal. A simple no spoken with trembling lips. A decision to pause before responding. A refusal to explain yourself for the 100th time. These gestures seem small, but in the landscape of the psyche, they are seismic. For the first time, you are asserting that you are not merely a mirror. You are a self-distinct and worthy of protection. Jung understood boundaries as a natural outgrowth of individuation. To become whole is not to isolate yourself, but to know where you end and another begins. Without this knowing, empathy collapses into sacrifice. Without boundaries, compassion turns to martyrdom. The birth of boundaries is the soul's way of reclaiming the ground it has ceded to illusion. The narcissist may rage against these lines. They may accuse you of selfishness, of coldness, of betrayal. But their protest is a sign that the spell is weakening. They depended on your lack of boundaries to sustain their performance. Each boundary you draw is a fracture in the echo chamber. Each refusal is a step out of the hall of mirrors. Boundaries are not walls built of anger. They are gates built of respect. They say, I will not lose myself to preserve your illusion. I will not abandon my truth to soothe your fear. I will not silence my soul so that yours can pretend to shine. These declarations are not acts of cruelty. They are acts of life. The birth of boundaries is often accompanied by grief. You realize how much of yourself you surrendered. You mourn the years spent in silence, the energy poured into sustaining someone else's mask. This grief is necessary. It is the soil in which your new self takes root. Through it, you learn that mourning is not weakness, but transformation. Imagine a tree that has been bent for years by a heavy weight pressing down upon it. The branches droop, the trunk leans. Then one day the weight is lifted. Slowly, painfully, the tree begins to straighten. It will never erase the bend completely, but in its resilience there is beauty. Its scars are not shame, but testimony. So it is with you. As boundaries are born, you begin to stand straighter. Your no becomes a song of survival. Your yes becomes authentic, offered freely, rather than coerced. For the first time, you feel the ground beneath your feet as yours. The narcissist may call you cold, but you are not cold, you are clear. They may call you cruel, but you are not cruel. You are whole. The birth of boundaries is the moment you realize that empathy without limits is not love, it is self-destruction. True compassion requires roots as well as wings. This fifth sign is both terrifying and exhilarating. Terrifying because it threatens the entire structure of the echo chamber. Exhilarating because it signals the dawn of freedom. You are no longer a reflection. You are no longer only an echo. You are a presence, a self, a voice. And though the path ahead will still be difficult, this birth changes everything. Once you have felt the strength of your own boundaries, you cannot go back to dissolution. Once you have tasted the dignity of your own, no, you cannot return to silence. The echo chamber begins to crumble, not with a shout, but with a line drawn in the soul. A line that says, here I am. I will not vanish. I am not your mirror. I am myself. Once boundaries are born, something even deeper begins to awaken. It is not simply the act of saying no. It is the longing for something larger, something real. You find yourself drawn toward truth, not the glittering promises of the narcissist's performance, not the hollow comfort of their approval, but the raw, unpolished clarity of what is. This is the sixth sign that you have outgrown the echo chamber. You are no longer satisfied with illusion. You are no longer willing to trade your authenticity for their applause. Instead, you feel an inner pull, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, toward a life that resonates with honesty. The pull toward truth often begins quietly. You catch yourself questioning stories you once accepted without hesitation. You hear the flattering words and notice the emptiness beneath them. You sense when affection is given only as a transaction. Where before you silenced these doubts, now you let them rise. They disturb you, but they also energize you. Jung wrote that the psyche has an innate drive toward individuation, a movement toward wholeness that cannot be permanently suppressed. This pull is not chosen. It is built into the very fabric of who you are. And once it begins, it is unstoppable. The truth may frighten you. It may mean acknowledging that the person you depended on cannot give what you hoped. It may mean facing your own patterns of self-erasure. It may mean grieving the dream you carried for so long. But despite the fear, you feel yourself leaning toward it. Because even in its pain, truth feels lighter than illusion. Imagine standing in a darkened room lit only by flickering candles. The shadows on the wall dance in mesmerizing shapes. For a time you mistake them for reality. Then in the corner you see a faint crack of daylight. At first you turn away. The shadows are familiar. But the pull of that light grows stronger. It promises clarity, warmth, life. Eventually, you cannot resist. You walk toward it, even though you know the shadows will fade. So it is with the pull toward truth. The daylight may expose what you do not want to see, but it also reveals the path forward. It shows you where you stand, who you are, and what you can become. The narcissist may fight against this pull. They may demand you return to the echo chamber, to the roles you once played so faithfully. They may shower you with promises or attack you with accusations. But once the pull begins, their power weakens. You can hear the hollowness in their words. You can feel the weight of their projections. And no matter how much they try to draw you back, a deeper gravity pulls you outward. The pull toward truth is not only about seeing them more clearly, it is about seeing yourself. You recognize your own hunger for authenticity. You admit the cost of living as an echo. You honor the voice inside that whispers, "I deserve more than survival. I deserve to be whole." With each step toward truth, the illusion grows thinner. The chamber's walls echo less. The mirrors reflect less power. You begin to notice beauty outside their performance, small moments of joy, quiet glimpses of your own strength, connections that feel mutual rather than consuming. These glimpses are the signs of a new life taking shape. The pull toward truth is the soul's compass. It does not promise ease, but it promises meaning. It does not erase pain, but it transforms it into growth. Jung often described truth as the meeting of opposites, the integration of shadow and light. When you follow this pull, you begin to integrate. You are no longer only the empathic giver, nor the silenced echo. You are both shadow and light, capable of compassion and clarity, of love and boundaries. This sixth sign is the beginning of courage. The courage to look at reality without flinching. The courage to walk away from illusions that once defined your world. The courage to honor your own inner compass above the voices that once dictated your worth. The pull toward truth may leave you lonely at first. Illusion is crowded. Truth is quiet. But in that quiet, you discover something profound. You discover yourself. And in that discovery lies the promise of connection more authentic than you ever imagined. The pull toward truth is not the end of the journey. It is the threshold. Once you step across, there is no returning to the echo chamber. You have chosen reality over reflection, light over shadow, authenticity over illusion. And in that choice, you are preparing for the final awakening, the moment when the self emerges in its full voice, unafraid, unbroken, and whole. The pull toward truth does not end with clarity alone. Clarity opens the door, but you must step through it. And when you do, something remarkable happens. The voice you thought was lost, the self you believed had dissolved, rises again. This is the seventh sign, the awakening of the self. For so long you have been shaped by reflections. You bent yourself to fit the mask of another, silenced your voice to preserve the illusion, surrendered your essence for the promise of belonging. You thought yourself was gone, buried under years of echoes. But the self does not disappear. It waits. It waits in the quiet, in the shadow, in the hidden places of your soul. And when the moment is right, it stirs. The awakening is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself with trumpets. It often begins in the smallest ways. You hear your own laughter return, unforced and unmeasured. You feel your body relax in the presence of truth. You notice joy that does not depend on approval. These moments are small, but they are sacred. They are proof that your essence has survived. Jung described the self as the totality of the psyche, the union of conscious and unconscious, shadow and light. To awaken the self is to embrace all of who you are, not just the parts that please others, not just the fragments that fit the mirror, but the whole flawed, radiant being. This awakening is not about perfection. It is about integration. It is about claiming the exiled parts of yourself and saying, "You belong to me." The narcissist may still call to you. Their performance may still shimmer at the edges of your vision. But once the self awakens, their spell weakens. You no longer crave their echo because you have found your own resonance. You no longer need their reflection because you have learned to see yourself. The awakening of the self is both gentle and fierce. Gentle because it whispers with compassion, "You are enough." Fierce because it declares with courage, "You will not vanish again." This balanced softness and strength is the essence of individuation. It is the moment you realize that empathy is not meant to erase you, but to flow from a place of wholeness. Imagine standing before the shattered mirror. The shards lie scattered on the floor, reflecting fragments of light. For a long time you feared this breaking. You thought it meant the end. But as you look closer, you see yourself not as pieces, but as presence. You are not in the glass at all. You are the one standing free of it. For the first time, the reflection is not needed. You are real without it. The awakening of the self is not the end of struggle. Life will still bring shadows, still test your boundaries, still tempt you with illusions. But you will face them differently. You will face them rooted in your own ground, anchored in your own voice. The chamber may still echo faintly in memory, but it no longer defines you. You have stepped outside its walls. This seventh sign is the culmination of a long journey. From the first moment when the echo lost its sweetness, to the cracks in the mirror, to the birth of boundaries, each step has been leading here. The awakening of the self is the realization that your wholeness does not depend on another's gaze. It is the recognition that your soul carries both shadow and light, and that both are yours to honor. In this awakening, love takes on a new meaning. No longer the desperate attempt to heal another at the cost of yourself, but the steady exchange between two whole beings. Compassion becomes clearer, cleaner. Empathy becomes strength rather than sacrifice. You can give without losing. You can care without dissolving. The self that awakens is not the fragile echo that once longed for approval. It is the Jungian warrior of compassion, tender yet strong, luminous yet grounded. It is the part of you that has walked through illusion, endured silence, borne grief, and returned with wisdom. The echo chamber is behind you now. Its walls may have seemed unbreakable, but they were made of illusion. And illusion cannot contain a soul that has chosen truth. This is the seventh sign: you are awake. You are whole. You are yourself. You have walked through 7 signs, 7 thresholds on the path out of the narcissistic echo chamber. Each sign was both a wound and a revelation. The sound that no longer satisfied, the mask that began to slip, the distance from your own voice, the cracks in the mirror, the birth of boundaries, the pull toward truth, and finally, the awakening of the self. Together they form a story of emergence. It is not a story of sudden escape, nor a simple battle of good against evil. It is the slow, painful, courageous process of reclaiming your soul. When the sound no longer satisfied you, discovered that echoes cannot feed you forever. When the mask began to slip, you saw illusion for what it was. When your own voice felt distant, you learned that silence is not the same as peace. When the mirror cracked, you realized you were never truly seen. When boundaries were born, you found the strength to protect your own ground. When truth began to pull you forward, you followed, even though it hurt. And when the self finally awakened, you knew that no chamber, no illusion, no mask could ever contain you again. Jung taught that individuation is not the rejection of shadow, but the integration of it. To leave the echo chamber is not to deny your past, it is to carry it as part of your wholeness. The silence you endured, the illusions you believed, the pain you carried, these are not wasted years. They are the crucible in which your strength was forged. Do not think of yourself as broken for having entered the chamber. You entered because you longed for connection, because your empathy was deep, because your soul believed in love. These are not flaws, they are gifts. What was missing was not your goodness, but the boundaries that protect it. And now, through pain and awakening, you are learning that empathy is not meant to consume you, but to guide you. The journey forward is not about erasing the past. It is about stepping into the present with clearer eyes, stronger roots, and a more compassionate heart. You will still feel echoes sometimes. Memories will resurface. Old patterns will whisper. But you will recognize them for what they are, remnants of a chamber you no longer inhabit. They are not your home. Your true home is within. It is in the voice you have reclaimed, in the boundaries you have built, in the truth you have chosen. It is in the self that has awakened, whole and luminous, carrying both shadow and light. And so as you leave this chamber behind, take a moment to honor yourself. Honor the courage it took to notice the signs. Honor the grief you carried. Honor the love that still lives in you, now purified, now clearer, now rooted in truth. This journey is not only yours. It is an archetypal story woven into the collective human experience. To be lost in illusion, to suffer, to awaken, to emerge. This is the path of countless souls. By walking it, you join a lineage of seekers who have dared to face themselves and to choose wholeness over repetition. The narcissist's echo chamber may have felt like a prison, but it has also been a teacher. It forced you to confront what you will no longer accept. It pushed you to discover your own strength, and in breaking free, you have not only reclaimed your own soul, you have become a beacon for others who are still trapped in the chamber's walls. So let this be your reminder. The echoes are not your song. The mirrors are not your truth. The silence is not your destiny. You are more than reflection. You are more than projection. You are self-awake, alive, and whole. And from this wholeness, your empathy becomes wisdom. Your compassion becomes strength. Your love becomes free. The journey of individuation does not end here. It continues each day in every choice you make to honor your authentic self. But you have crossed the threshold. You have stepped beyond the echo chamber. And that step is everything. As you move forward, carry this truth with you. You are not an echo. You are the voice itself.